Have you experienced symptoms of pumpkin spice coming out of your ears this season? Then this video is for you. I'm going to show you 3 fall-inspired recipes that do not include any pumpkin or pumpkin spice, but still have all of that fall flavor and feeling. For the first one, we're going to make a relatively healthy pasta with a lot of zucchini that has so much flavor and creaminess without any cream. So I'm going to start by sauteing some garlic and some olive oil, and then chop up quite a few zucchini. I use quite a few because they're really small. You could probably make do with about 3 big ones. They tend to come in the fall season. Mine were just minis. And you can see you just have a big pot of zucchini, and you do not want to fry them. You just want to saute them and have them melt down slowly. You don't need a lot of color to develop at all. You want them to actually release water and get really pulpy, because all of that fiber in the zucchini is what is going to make our sauce creamy. So once they get to about this stage, you're going to add some butter. Now this is a zucchini butter sauce, so we're not going to skimp on the butter. You could use a little less than I did, but you'll see that this serves about 4 people. It's 500 grams of pasta, so even though it looks like a lot of butter, it's not, and you'll really get a lot of flavor out of it. So it's really buttery and rich and delicious without really being that naughty. And you can see how the butter emulsifies with the melted down zucchini to form a really, really luscious sauce. Always reserve some pasta water in general, but for this sauce it's especially important, about 1/2 cup. I added some fresh basil. You could also do fresh parsley, that would be great too. And then you add your cooked pasta about a minute off of where you would want it to be so that it's still al dente, of course. And just start mixing it up and slowly adding pasta water until you get a creamy sauce. You'll be surprised at how creamy and luscious the mouthfeel of this pasta is, and the parmesan adds that extra nuttiness and saltiness that you really want, and it really just completes everything and makes everything pull together and taste extra delicious. So don't skimp, although you don't need a chunk as large as mine is. I get it from Costco, and then it's even hard for me to lift it and grate it, but totally worth it and one of my prized possessions. So here's my pasta bowl, fully laden of course, with a lot of parmesan on top. And it really surprises me how much I love this pasta, because zucchini is not my favorite vegetable. I'm completely immune to the zoodles trend. It's not for me, and I really, really love this. It's a nice blend of healthy and comforting, and just really, really easy to eat. If your kids don't like eating a lot of vegetables, or someone in your family doesn't, this would be a great way of encouraging them to eat more. What I'll link down below for you as well, if you are feeling a little bit of pumpkin or butternut squash, is another recipe that's very creamy that I did a couple years ago for pasta. That is a creamy butternut squash pasta that doesn't use very much cream at all, and also kind of capitalizes on that fibrous nature of the vegetable when it's been cooked down. Next up, I'm going to do a protein recipe. So this is pretty much what you'll need for it. It's very, very simple. It's for pork tenderloin, but you could also use pork shoulder for this as well. I just tend to use tenderloin because I like how lean they are. So be prepared, the recipe looks a little weird as it goes along, but what it does is it uses the power of the lactic acid in milk. This is like Sunday Riley Good Genes serum, but for your meat instead of for your face. So it really tenderizes the meat, and you simmer it for, I would say, around 2 hours, a generous 1.5 to 3 hours, until the meat is super tender and you can see the milk solids have separated, and you're actually going to get rid of those milk solids and only be left behind with this amazing gravy. You can pick the milk solids that stick to the meat and the herbs off really easily, and then what you want to do is separate out your gravy, which is actually super easy because everything goes really chunky and gross looking, and what you're left with is this amazing creamy jus that does not taste anything like milk. You would never guess that there was any milk in this recipe at all, and you just spoon it over your pork, and it's so incredibly tender from the simmering process, and it stays way more juicy than it would if it was made in a regular stew. I really, really love the gravy, and you'll see that mine is quite thin, and that is a personal preference thing. So I reduce it a little bit for after the meat has come out, but I don't add any cornstarch or flour, but you totally could if you wanted to, and everything has that really nice subtle sage and thyme flavor. It's so delicious. Which brings me to my third and final recipe, a baking recipe. We had to do at least one. I will also include my waffles recipe, which is the other thing I was making at the same time here. So the yeast and the butter do not go in. They are just happening to be pictured in my first shot. The ingredients for these muffins are incredibly healthy. They don't have any butter in them. They have just a tiny little drizzle of oil, and they're actually made with yogurt to keep it moist. You don't have to use super bougie yogurt as I am. That just happened to be what I had in my fridge that was going to go off in a few days. And so you use a relatively small amount of brown sugar, couple of eggs, little tub 8 ounces of yogurt of any kind. You could use Greek yogurt, just anything plain and unsweetened, and add a little bit of vanilla extract. Of course, I like to add a good splash because I really think it incorporates all of those delicious fall flavors. And then I like to add some lemon zest, but some other ideas to flavor these muffins would be cardamom, pumpkin spice if you must, although I enjoy having a break from it with these muffins, or even some orange zest as well. What makes them truly special is the fact that they are incredibly moist and delicious while using spelt flour, and have a really nutty, crumbly, almost marzipan-like texture from the ground walnuts that I use. You could also use pecans or even ground up almonds, although I wouldn't use almond flour necessarily for this exact recipe. So all you do is combine your dry ingredients with your wet ingredients. You don't need a hand mixer, you don't need to cream anything. It's really easy, simple, straightforward. Just mix everything, and as long as you've got your important ingredients like the flour and the eggs and the sugar kind of relatively well measured out, everything else can be a little bit eyeballed. I use a big bowl of fruit, so I actually used a full banana chopped up, which you can't taste. It just compensates a little bit for the small amount of sugar in the recipe. And then I used 2 chopped up pears that were really ripe, so they add a really nice melty fruit flavor to the muffins, and again keep them really moist. So they're really melt in your mouth, and you would think that they have a lot of fat in them when they absolutely do not, making them an actually breakfast appropriate recipe, because I find, you know, all other muffin recipes are delicious too, but so many of them have a really shocking amount of sugar and fat in them, which means that they're really more of a dessert than a breakfast. These you can eat for either. I do like them spread with a little bit of butter and warmed up, especially once you get past the first day mark, but they are so tasty and just melt in your mouth. And if you like things that are related to pears or marzipan, then you will especially enjoy them. So that is it for my 3 fall recipes. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in my next installment. Happy fall!